This unlucky loser ends up kicking the bucket in a tragic and totally unpredictable way. This time, it wasn't the usual truck we're used to seeing, but a train that slams into the bus at full speed, wiping him out instantly. In his final moments, all he could think about was the promise he'd made to his high school sweetheart, that he'd never leave her side. But when he opens his eyes, he realizes his name isn't Arudo anymore. It's Rio. It seems God had granted him insane powers, making the guy absurdly strong. With a flood of memories rushing into his mind, Rio wonders if he's just delirious with fever. But those thoughts are cut short when some thugs burst into the house carrying a huge sack, saying he reeks of some anime-obsessed nerd before throwing him out on the street. While scavenging for fruit, Rio keeps wondering who the hell this Arudo guy even was, but he decides it doesn't matter. He's Rio now, and his only goal in life is to avenge his mother, who was murdered right in front of him. After devouring the fruit, Rio gets dressed, and a group of women approach him, calling him cute. But Celia gently asks if he's seen her friend Flora. He says he hasn't, so Celia casts a spell to check if he's lying and senses a pure aura coming from him. Once she confirms he's telling the truth, Celia hands him a few silver coins as thanks, and he rushes off to tell the guys. But the moment he steps inside, a killer tries to stab him in the chest with a dagger. The bag of coins ends up saving his life as it falls to the floor, and he realizes everyone around him is dead. Just as he's about to face his end, a woman calls him Aruto and teaches him how to use the limitless magic power inside his body. Channeling that magical aura, Rio strengthens his body and pushes the assassin back with a single palm strike. Taking a fighter's stance straight from Aruto's memories, he lands a kick square on the assassin's face, dodging the man's blows. When the killer keeps coming, Rio twists his arm and snaps it. Furious at being beaten by a kid, the assassin charges again, but Rio throws him to the ground. Right when he's about to end the fight, he hears a girl's cry and realizes the thing the thugs were carrying was Flora. The princess begs him to get her out of there, but when she sees the bodies, she faints. With no other choice, Rio helps the girl, carrying her on his back and bringing her back to the women who'd been looking for her. Flora's sister, Christina, accuses Rio of kidnapping her and immediately attacks, not even giving him a chance to explain. Vanessa presses a knife to his face and orders him to go to the castle to answer for his crimes. The knight sees the assassin, but a mysterious man kills him before he can talk. Inside the castle, Rio is tied up and tortured by Charles, who keeps punching him to force a confession that he kidnapped Flora, just to cover his own mistakes. But Rio's only crime was having a face considered ugly. When the princess wakes up, her allies ask what happened. She tells them that, in fact, Rio was the one who saved her and that they should call him immediately. Unfortunately, Rio is already beaten nearly to death from all the abuse, yet the soldier keeps hitting him, trying to restore his reputation after failing to protect the princess. What does he think he's doing to the boy? Celia steps in, saying Rio was the one who saved the princess. The soldier lets go of him, but Rio's body collapses with broken bones, and Celia rushes to heal him. After blacking out, Rio wakes up to see Celia's face. She apologizes for everything he's been through just for trying to help the princess. She tells him that the king wants to meet him after the rescue, and he agrees. Inside the castle, Rio meets the king, showing the entire royal family that he's gone from asking the princess's father for permission to take her out, to calling him father as well. A few days later, Rio is ready to start school with the others, but the first day is rough, with a boy mocking the way he talks. As the day goes on, everyone finds out he can't read yet and keeps making fun of him. Even so, Rio doesn't give up and goes to the teacher's office to ask for extra lessons. After a few hours of studying, he solves all the exercises easily, understanding the symbols because for someone who carries the memories of a college student, that's just basic math. Celia invites him for tea and asks if anything at school is bothering him. He's hurt by the bullying but hides it, saying he's fine. A few weeks later, during sword training, the instructor calls Rio up for a spar, curious about his unusual stance. Rio shows off a different style and goes head-to-head with the instructor. His dojo lessons with his grandfather let him attack and defend at the same time. Still, one kid keeps mocking how he holds his sword. The instructor is amazed by Rio's talent and asks if he's ever considered becoming a royal knight, but Rio is the only one in the class who doesn't want that. Months go by, and Rio keeps studying the language until he catches up with his classmates in no time. His sharp mind surpasses everyone's, but the memories of his past life still haunt him, especially how much he misses Mon, since in this world, all he's met are people who torment him. Rio remembers Mon as his childhood sweetheart, separated when their parents divorced. Arudo saw her once in high school, but after that, she vanished completely, as if she'd disappeared off the face of the earth. The inner conflict inside Rio grows stronger, reinforcing the idea that Haruto is dead and he is Rio now, facing every obstacle head-on. The next morning, the test results are posted, and everyone's shocked to see that an orphan with no home scored a perfect mark, exactly like the princess. The bullies, who aren't even worth naming, call him a cheater, saying he's too dumb to get the same grades as royalty. The princess's friend steps in to defend him, calling them jealous, and Celia backs her up, telling them to prove that Aru cheated. Embarrassed, the bullies leave. Later, Celia confides in Rio that she's worried about how the other kids treat him. He asks if she ever went through the same thing growing up, but she says at least she had friends. Rio tells her he'll be fine because he has her as a friend. She blushes like a typical anime character, saying she doesn't mind being his friend, but he keeps teasing her to make her repeat it, clearly enjoying the moment. Their bond grows stronger, and Celia promises she'll always hug him whenever he feels down because of the bullying. Years pass as they share these moments together, and before long, Rio is chosen to represent the school in the upcoming Sword Arts tournament. The nameless bully, still in puberty, refuses to accept Rio as the school's representative. The instructor ignores the complaints, and Celia is amazed by Rio's strength, also noticing how much he's grown over the years. She comments on how tall he's gotten, but Rio teases her back, saying she's still as small as ever. While sipping tea, Celia asks Rio what his plans are after graduation. He tells her he wants to leave the country because he feels there's no place for him there. Celia feels hurt, especially since he's always been the one to help tidy up and cheer her up during tough times. Rio apologizes for having to go, but reminds her she'll be getting married soon, something Celia immediately denies. He tells her she should start thinking about it, or she might end up growing old alone, then playfully adds that she'll always be small in the important areas, so it wouldn't matter anyway. Celia wonders where Rio's adventures will take him, while he says his only wish is to reach the country where his mother lived before she died, his voice heavy with sorrow. She thinks about everything he must have gone through. On the day of the tournament, Rio is the first from the academy to step onto the field. The bully comments that no one expects much from him, but at least he should avoid embarrassing the school with his sword skills. When his opponent appears, surprise, it's the same man who tortured him years ago for no reason. The fight begins, and the knight, full of pride, attacks with everything he's got, having been demoted since the incident 5 years earlier. But his anger makes him reckless, opening his guard and letting Rio disarm him and end the match. Enraged by defeat, the soldier tries to justify himself, saying he wasn't fighting seriously, but the judge reprimands him, telling him to accept his loss with honor. That night after the tournament, a mysterious man drinks with the soldier, fishing for information. He asks about the student who was the only one to win a match while everyone else lost. The soldier reveals that Rio is the same boy who saved the princess 5 years ago, which sparks the man's interest. The next day, Celia is excited to congratulate Rio for his victory, but she sees him talking to a woman who ends up confessing her love for him, and that makes Celia question her own feelings toward him. During a class on using lightning to control magical power, the teacher jokes that they're only learning it because Rio is the only one who can't control his magic properly. He mocks him, saying Rio can only make a tiny ball of light. Celia then demonstrates to the class that mastering magic requires controlling multiple light spheres at once. Rio is amazed by her control and wonders why he can only copy others' magic after seeing it in action. After class, one of the bullies approaches and tells Rio to stop seducing women just because he got lucky in the tournament. Celia defends Rio, but the boy insists, saying Rio's been flirting with her too. She denies it, but the bully warns that his family won't stay quiet if Rio keeps messing with the girl's feelings. Princess Flora sees the scene and feels uneasy watching Rio get accused for no reason, blaming herself for causing him so much trouble, and wondering how she can repay him for saving her life. A few weeks later, the bully presents the class with a mission they need to complete for a high grade. He says he got some hot tips from the upperclassmen and makes Rio carry all the gear since he can't use magic. Rio accepts without complaint, but Flora feels sorry for him and offers to help. Rio politely refuses, keeping his gentlemanly composure, but Flora remains sad seeing him face these kinds of situations all the time. When goblins appear to attack, the students fight them off easily and mock Rio for being the only one left out. What they don't realize is that only Rio noticed a dark figure watching from afar. When they reach the end of the path, thinking they're safe, they come face to face with a massive cliff. Before they can figure out what's going on, a group of orcs shows up and hurls spears at them. Rio dodges one of the strikes, but the bully takes a hit to the foot and runs toward another student who shoves him aside. At that moment, Princess Flora slips and falls off the cliff. Rio shoots forward at high speed, dives down, and manages to push her back up to the ledge, saving her life. The orcs continue attacking, but the students unite and use their magic to wipe out the first wave. As they celebrate their victory, Rio watches and wonders if he'll ever be part of that group, since his strange magic somehow kept him from getting hurt in the fall. The students blame the bully for nearly throwing Flora off the cliff, but he turns it around on Rio, making up a story to pin all the blame on him. Despite Flora's attempt to defend him, the other students believe the lie. Rio realizes that his dream of graduating from that academy might never come true. While Flora tries to clear Rio's name, a gigantic flying beast appears, blocking the way out. All the students unite again and unleash their magic, but the creature dodges everything and deflects their spells, leaving them with no way to defend themselves. When they try to flee, Flora is the only one who stays behind, trying to heal a fallen classmate. The beast moves in to attack from behind, but Rio appears at the last second and slashes it with his magic-infused skill. He boosts his speed and agility to dodge its blows and counterattack. The beast leaps into the sky and prepares a powerful strike, but Rio dodges and keeps attacking to hold it off. While the other students regroup to help Flora, Rio quietly slips away, avoiding being seen or revealed as the survivor. Watching from above, the dark figure finds the situation fascinating, realizing he's never seen a child use the secret arts of the spirits. Later that night, Celia visits the headmaster but overhears a conversation with the bully's parents. The headmaster knows Rio probably did nothing wrong, but decides to place all the blame on him to protect the royal family's reputation, even if it means falsely accusing him. That night, Celia fears she'll never see Rio again, but he shows up knocking on her door. Sneaking inside, she runs to hug him, saying how worried she's been. Celia tells him about the false accusation, but Rio knows that, as an orphan, no one would ever believe his side of the story. He thanks Celia for always standing by him, and says she's the only person he wanted to say goodbye to before leaving for his parents' homeland. He promises to send letters under the name Arude, and as they say goodbye, Celia asks if they'll ever see each other again. Rio assures her he'll come back to her, and Celia wishes him a safe journey, waiting patiently for his letters as tears stream down her face. That same night, the bully's father orders a girl named Latifa to find Rio and kill him, no matter how far he runs. Rio travels swiftly across the land, overcoming monsters along the way until he reaches the kingdom of Galar, where no one has heard of his alleged crime. While exploring the city, a mysterious girl watches him, and Rio senses that something about the place feels off. Inside a tavern, a chef offers him a serving of pasta created by someone named Lelot. Rio is intrigued to notice that the dish has the same name as one from his previous life, and wonders if Leila could be from his world. After tasting it, Rio asks where he can buy more ingredients for his journey, and the chef sends him to the guild's headquarters. A maid introduces herself as Lotto and spends the day helping him with his needs. Rio sends a letter to Celia explaining that he'll be out of touch for a while because he's crossing the forest. As he leaves the city, he hears a blonde girl calling Lotto Lelot, but the maid begs him to keep her true identity a secret. Rio continues running through the woods until he comes across a child collapsed on the ground. He approaches to check if she's okay, but she suddenly turns and hurls a poisoned fang at him, nearly knocking him out. Before he can neutralize the toxin, the girl, a feline, moves with insane speed, and he barely manages to dodge her strikes while activating his body reinforcement. She speeds up with magic and lunges at him with a dagger, but Rio blocks, evades, sheaths his sword, and uses advanced martial arts to knock her down, pinning her to the ground and holding a knife to her throat. Rio presses the blade to the girl's neck, but she bursts into tears, begging for her life and calling out for her mother. Feeling pity, he uses his spiritual arts to knock her unconscious and ties her up. Examining her, Rio notices a slave collar and wonders if he can break it using the magic he learned. He activates a dispel through his hand, and the collar shatters. In Latifa's memories, she recalls being on the same bus and dying in the crash. Then she woke up to the bully threatening her, saying she'd be his obedient little sister and had to call him dear brother. She refused, and he forced her into submission. Awakening from the nightmare, Latifa realizes the collar is gone. She's finally free. Rio comforts her, and she confesses she never knew her master's name, only that her brother was called Stuart, which makes Rio realize the bully had sent her after him. Rio asks if Latifa still wants to kill him, but she says no. After freeing her, he tells her she's free to do whatever she wants, and suggests finding shelter in one of the nearby kingdoms. He walks away, Latifa follows, begging to come with him. Rio warns her about trusting someone she just tried to kill, but Latifa insists, saying he can put the collar back on if he wants. She's more afraid of being alone. Reluctantly, Rio agrees to take her along, and she introduces herself as Latifa. They begin their journey together, and sometime later, Rio cooks pasta for her. Surprised, Latifa recognizes it as spaghetti and mentions she used to eat something like that, making Rio wonder if she's from his world too. That night, he hears her crying in her sleep, begging to go back to Tokyo, and hearing that, Rio realizes Latifa must be from the same world as Aruto. He comforts her as she sleeps, and when she wakes up beside him, she notices he looks like the boy from the bus. When she wakes, Latifa asks if she can call him Anshan, and though confused, Rio allows it, thinking it might comfort her. After weeks of travel, they arrive at the giant tree Rio had been searching for, but Latifa can't see it. They enter the forest and spend the night under the open sky. During the night, Latifa is tormented by nightmares, and Rio uses his spiritual arts to calm her down. Suddenly, 3 girls appear at their hiding spot and attack Rio, thinking he kidnapped Latifa after sensing the spiritual energy surrounding her. Ignoring his explanations, they capture and electrocute him, knocking him out and taking him as a prisoner. As Rio floats within the magical dimension, he sees an unfamiliar girl standing before him. She doesn't know her own identity, but seems to know his past, calling him Arud. He asks how she knows about his previous life, and the girl reveals she's connected to him, saying she belongs only to him. She hugs him before fading away, and Rio wakes up to find Latifa running toward him in tears to embrace him. An elder of the village approaches to apologize for their treatment, and all the girls kneel before him to beg forgiveness before freeing him. The elder explains that Rio will meet with the other village leaders the next day, but for now he should rest. The next morning, Rio goes to the heart of the world tree and meets the 3 leaders, who apologize for the misunderstanding and want to make amends. Only asks that they take care of Latifa, and the leaders agree, allowing him to stay in the village with her. Before he leaves, an entity named Driss, the spirit of the world tree, approaches him. As she nears, she senses a spirit living inside Rio and wonders if he struggles with magic because spirits usually drain a human's entire magical capacity. Rio realizes his constant difficulty with magic comes from the spirit residing within him. Lady Draw holds his face and inspects the spirit, commenting on the incredible amount of spiritual energy he possesses and teasing that she'd love to taste some of that energy herself. However, she reacts in surprise upon realizing there's a human-shaped spirit sleeping inside Rio, a type that's extremely rare. The elders then reconsider, debating whether to treat him as a saint, one of the highest titles granted to a human. One of the village girls leads him to his new house, where Latifa excitedly shows him around. One of the girls asks which rooms he'd prefer they sleep in, revealing that all 3 of them will be living with Rio. Ursula, who arranged this living setup, explains that it'll help Rio pick up the village's customs while also letting Latifa make real friends who can look after her. Rio immediately agrees to the idea of living with them, hoping everyone can get along peacefully. Over the months, Rio learns the village's spiritual magic and throws himself into understanding the culture, whether it's farming, metal forging, or combat training. The seasons fly by, and a year passes until the Grand Spirit Festival arrives. Lady Draw appears to kick off the festival, while far away, a griffin carries 2 men toward a dragon's cave. Rios returns with an egg and hands it to a rookie soldier, telling him to take care of it while he pilots the griffin. Mid-flight, Rios spots a cloud of flying creatures chasing after him. Back in the village, Lady Draws kisses Rio and Latifa on the forehead to seal their citizenship ceremony, and the elders launch the celebrations. Rio finally understands why the anime is considered a harem when the girls, after drinking apple cider, insist on pushing their beds together. One of them says that won't exactly strengthen their friendship, but the others say they want something more. They confess they've noticed that Rio always keeps to himself, which surprises him. He never imagined they'd picked up on that. When the girls leave to grab more food, Ursula approaches Rio, and he starts wondering if it's time to come clean with Latifa. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the village, Rios tells his subordinate to rest and says he'll check the perimeter, handing him an artifact that can track his position if things go south. The soldier swallows the thing, and Rios departs, noticing the wyverns closing in on his subordinate. At the same time, Rio walks with Latifa to a quiet corner. She begs to go back soon because she wants to play with him, but Rio asks if she's enjoying living in the village. She replies that she loves it there, and feels happy to have made such close friends over time, which makes Rio smile. But then he reveals that he'll soon have to leave the village. He's been traveling east this whole time and won't be able to take her along. Heartbroken, Latifa runs off crying. Meanwhile, Lady Diars alerts the villagers that the wyverns are approaching and sends an army of beast women to find out why. At the same time, Russ sneaks into the back of the wyvern cave and finds hidden eggs, storing them in a magic chest. The beast women track Russ's griffin and try to intercept. He threatens them with a knife and tries to escape by flying off. Their leader fires a lightning strike to bring him down, but a massive wyvern appears, forcing Roos to dodge. Wyverns catch up, and after collecting all the eggs, Roos crushes a magic stone, killing his subordinate, who falls off the griffin. When Latifa returns to the village, she sees an egg falling and cracking open in front of her, revealing a baby dragon. At that same moment, a black wyvern appears, furious at seeing the injured hatchling, and prepares a fiery attack aimed at Latifa. Alma intervenes, summoning a tornado to protect her and calling her familiar to fight the wyvern, but the attacks miss, and Alma is thrown back. Recovering, Alma tries to buy time while Latifa distracts the dragon. Just as the beast is about to strike her, Rio appears, launching an ice projectile that pushes it back and rescues Latifa. Rio charges at the dragon, using his newly mastered spiritual techniques, fighting barehanded. The wyvern unleashes its final fire attack, but Rio fires a sphere of wind to immobilize it. When that's not enough, he uses the Giga Inferno ability straight into the dragon's mouth, slamming its jaws shut and frying its brain. Seeing their leader defeated, the remaining wyverns retreat. All the girls are stunned by Rio's strength, and Latifa hugs him, thanking him for saving her. The next morning, Latifa apologizes for how she reacted, explaining that she always knew the day would come but was afraid he wanted to get rid of her. Rio comforts her, saying he'd never abandon her, and reveals that he's been traveling east toward the region where his parents once lived. For the first time, Latifa learns something about Rio's past and decides to share her own. Before being born in this world, she died and was reincarnated from a place called Japan. Rio believes her, revealing that he's also reincarnated, and regrets not telling her sooner. Latifah asks if he still carries regrets from his past, and Rio admits that he does, but swears he'll grow strong enough to make up for them. She promises to become stronger for him too, and to wait for the day he returns. A week later, Rio prepares to leave. The dwarven leader gifts him a sword and a cloak made from the black wyvern's hide, offering both camouflage and high defense. The last elder presents him with the national treasure, a space-time pouch that can store all the gifts. Rio swears he'll come back to help the village if they ever need him. All the girls wish him a safe journey, and Latifah hugs him one last time before he takes off. As he rises into the sky, Latifah breaks down crying. 2 weeks later, Rio still hasn't found any trace of his parents and decides to return to the village to catch up with everyone. When he arrives, the girls greet him as they water the plants, but when Sue sees him, she senses something different. R takes him to Grandma Yuba's house, where she notices Rio's strange outfit and asks if he's from another country. Rio explains that he's traveled through many lands before finally arriving there, revealing that the Zen Ami family once lived in that place. Yuba is shocked to hear those names and asks Ruri and Sue to step outside so they can talk privately. She asks for more details about his family, and he tells her that his father died before he was born and his mother was murdered when he was 5. He's always wanted to fulfill his mother's promise of returning to her homeland to honor her memory. Noticing Rio's resemblance to his parents, Yuba realizes she's his grandmother, his father's mother. She thanks him for coming and explains that they already built graves for his parents. Then she leads him to the burial site, where Rio kneels to pay his respects. Yuba tells him that his parents had to flee the country in secret, though she can't reveal the whole truth about them yet. However, she says that if Rio decides to stay in the village, he'll learn more about his family. The next morning, Rio wakes up early to help around the village. While cooking, he accidentally catches Ruri's attention, but Sue and her brother Shin interrupt. They decide to take Rio hunting, and Shin challenges him to a race to the field. During the hunt, Rio hits a rare bird with his first arrow, impressing Shin. But Shin's inexperience makes him stumble, while Rio excels at the task. After the hunt, Rio decides to build a bathhouse using spiritual arts to give everyone more comfort. As he works, the girls start peeking in curiously. As the weeks pass, Rio fits more and more into daily village life, becoming a regular member of the community. Then comes the day of the harvest, when a group of men shouts for help from the other side of the village. 3 threatening men appear, captivated by Ruri and Sue's beauty. Shin steps up to defend them, but Ruri reminds him that an aggressive attitude could cause problems, since Gon, one of the men, is the son of the neighboring village's chief. She asks Gon why he came. Gon says he wants to spend the night at Ruri's house because one day, she might become his wife. Furious, Shin yells at him to get lost and tries to punch, but Gon blocks and pins him with one hand. Yuba appears, ordering Gon to release Shin and apologizes for her grandson's behavior, allowing Gon to stay in a guest cabin, as long as he doesn't leave it. As Gon walks away, he spots Rio, decides he looks ugly, and tries to trip him. Yuba warns everyone to stay on alert through the night. Since Shin lives alone with Sue, he begs Yuba to let Sue stay with her that night, and Yuba agrees. Rio suggests placing a protective charm in their room. At Gon's cabin, his goons brag about how he intimidated the village and plan to have their fun the next day. At dusk, Rio is training while the girls watch, curious about his dedication. He remembers his vow to become strong enough to protect someone special, but worries that she might already be with someone else. Sue overhears him and feels a deep sadness grow in her chest. That night, a man breaks into Sue and Ruri's room, but the charm activates, alerting them. Gon tries to silence Ruri by threatening to hurt Sue if she screams. However, when Rio sees the scene, he recalls his mother's murder and is consumed by rage. In a split second, he takes Gon down, throws him out of the cabin, and stomps on his neck, punching him repeatedly. The girls beg him to stop, and the other villagers rush in to restrain Rio before he kills Gon. Yuba realizes Gon tried to assault the girls and watches as Rio walks away. This is the second time Rio has felt the urge to kill, and he realizes that this thirst for vengeance brings him dangerously close to becoming like the person who took his mother's life. The next morning, a royal messenger arrives in the village to collect taxes and take Gon to prison. Yuba asks the messenger to deliver a letter to someone important in the kingdom. The messenger agrees and departs, taking Rio with him. Several days later, the group reaches the capital, and Gon is imprisoned. Rio strolls through the city with Sue, and a vendor suggests he buy a gift for his girlfriend. Sue tries to explain they're not together, but the woman comments that they make a beautiful couple and should buy a keepsake. Rio asks if Sue would like something, and she picks a flower to wear in her hair, enchanting Rio, so he decides to buy it for her. The vendor teases them further, saying Sue should fight for him before another girl snatches him away. In the city center, Rio spots a man trying to drag a woman away. Using his martial arts, he steps in to save her. The woman's guard rushes over to protect her, but Rio slips away quickly. When word reaches Gok, the woman's father, and an influential figure in the capital, He asks the messenger if this has anything to do with the letter sent by Yuba. Upon reading the letter, EI is shaken and asks if he's met anyone named Rio. He finds Rio and asks for a moment to talk in a nearby house. There, he reveals that he knew Rio's mother, who 20 years ago was a princess of this kingdom. At the time, the nation was at war, and Rio's father was the most skilled soldier among the Allied forces. Impressed by his talent, the king entrusted him with protecting the princess. Rio listens as EI recounts the tragic past his grandmother once told him. The king had trusted his legendary warrior father to protect his mother, the princess of the realm. But during peace negotiations, the enemy kingdom demanded Rio's father's execution and that his mother marry their prince. Those vile terms forced the couple to flee, and the king could do nothing but watch his daughter escape. Gok asks Rio to meet the king and queen, his maternal grandparents. After some thought, Rio agrees. The next morning, the king and queen are overwhelmed upon finally meeting their grandson, immediately noticing his resemblance to his mother. Deeply moved, Rio feels a connection to his lineage and answers their questions about his parents. He explains that he doesn't remember much since he was very young when his father died and his mother was murdered. He recalls her always smiling, until the day a man named Lucas betrayed Lucius, someone she trusted, broke into their home, and treacherously wounded Rio before killing his mother. Rio's grandfather understands his thirst for justice and suggests he train with Gok, the strongest warrior in the country, to prepare for the day he faces Lucius. During their sparring, Rio and Gok clash fiercely, with Gok using his secret technique, the first air slash. Rio blocks it with water magic before closing the distance to end the bout. Impressed by his skill, the king remarks that perhaps Rio no longer needs training, but Rio thanks him for the opportunity and expresses his wish to someday introduce his cousin to the family. When he returns to the village, Ruri asks where he's been, and Sue points toward the site of his parents' graves. Rio promises that to protect those he loves, he'll no longer run from his emotions and will instead embrace the pain he carries. With spring's arrival, Rio realizes he'll soon need to leave the village. Seeing Sue planting rice, he corrects her technique and suggests she oversee everyone's work while he's away. Surprised and confused, she asks what he means. He explains that he'll be leaving in the fall and doesn't know when or if he'll return. Heartbroken, Sue finishes her work with tears in her eyes, and when she gets home, she breaks down in sadness. Her brother Shin tries to comfort her, bringing her gifts and attempting to make her smile. Determined to follow Rio, Sue begins training in combat techniques every night, pushing herself to become stronger. Months pass, and the annual festival arrives. She uses the occasion to ask Rio for a private moment. During their meeting, Sue confesses her feelings. She's in love with him. Caught off guard, Rio apologizes, explaining that he can't return those feelings. She asks if it's because they aren't related by blood, but Rio clarifies that it's mainly because he's about to leave the village. Sue begs to go with him, revealing that she's been training non-stop for 6 months to avoid being a burden. She says she'd even be willing to reincarnate as his sister just to stay by his side. But Rio abruptly responds that even if she did all that, she'd still be ugly. Those words crush Sue and she bursts into tears. She grabs his hand, pleading to stay close to him, but Rio only apologizes and walks away. As he leaves, he senses Shin nearby and apologizes for how he treated his sister. The day of Rio's departure arrives. He prepares to leave at dawn. The village, Sue waits, and Gok questions her devotion to Rio, asking if she'd truly be willing to leave the village to follow him. Hesitant but sincere, Sue says she'd do anything to be with Rio. Before he leaves, she wishes him well and promises to become stronger until he returns. She waves one last time as Rio walks away, with Shin silently watching the scene. After a long journey, Rio finally reaches the World Tree in the 99th year of the Sacred Era. Latifa runs to hug him, and during dinner, Rio tells the elders about the family he met and what he's learned about his origins. The elders ask how long he plans to stay. Rio says it won't be long, but the story suddenly shifts focus with the arrival of a mysterious figure. The girls notice a strange young woman named Asa lying beside Rio. Asa, a spirit, reveals that she made a pact with Arudo, Rio's true name from his past life. However, all her memories were erased, and she doesn't even know her own name, asking Rio to give her one. Deeply moved, Rio decides to call her Asa because the image of spring comes to mind when he looks at her. The girls think the name is adorable, and Latifa asks if that makes them spirit sisters. Soon after, Lady Dars, the village's guardian spirit, appears before the council and remarks on the mystery of Asa's lost memories, suggesting they investigate the cause of her amnesia. Meanwhile, Asa, now fully attuned to the village's magic, demonstrates mastery over all elements in a dazzling display of power. In a training match with Rio, she mirrors his every move, even replicating his magic techniques with astonishing precision. Lady Didars interrupts the duel before they destroy the village, but it's clear Asa possesses incredible mastery over every kind of magic, and she's officially welcomed as the Elder's apprentice. The next night, the village holds a festival to celebrate Ace's arrival, and Rio takes the chance to say goodbye to the villagers and to Latifa, who grows uneasy upon learning he'll be leaving soon. In a more private farewell, Latifa finally asks why Asa calls him Arud. He explains that it was his name before reincarnating, and reveals that the two of them were passengers on the same bus in their previous world. Overwhelmed, she admits she's always thought of him as a brother, and he promises to return to her once his mission is over. The next morning, the village elders offer Rio gifts: a compass that always points back to the village, and a device that can change his hair color, helping him stay disguised on his travels. Rio asks them to look after Latifa while he's away and departs with Asa, determined to reunite with Celia and uncover the mysteries of his past and his connection to his former life. Upon reaching the capital, Rio uses the device to alter his appearance and sneaks into the old academy he once attended, heading down to the basement where Celia's office used to be. Finding the room empty, he realizes Celia may be in danger. With Asa's help, he casts an illusion spell on one of the professors to extract information. Under Asa's spell, the professor reveals that Celia was forced to move due to schemes orchestrated by the influential Charles, who's trying to bind her to him for his own gain. Now fully aware of Celia's dire situation, Rio decides to intervene and stop Charles from controlling her fate. Determined, he and Asa plan their next move to rescue their friend. Rio learns that Celia's wedding will take place the next day at the royal palace, and the groom is Lord Charles, the same man who tormented him in his childhood. After suffering a crushing defeat against the Proxia Empire, the Duke Arbor's house, led by Charles, brokered peace and now plans to consolidate power by merging with House Claw, forcing Celia into marriage. Determined to see her one last time, Rio decides to infiltrate the castle. Asa helps him locate her room, and he skillfully evades the guards to reach it. Meanwhile, Celia, resigned to her fate, silently mourns her situation, her last wish being to see Rio one more time. She takes a letter she'd kept as a keepsake and tosses it into the fire, letting go of all hope. Suddenly, the door creaks open, and Rio appears, asking her to stay quiet. In disbelief, Celia runs to hug him, realizing it's not a dream. Rio tells her he missed her, and she notices how much he's grown. In the middle of their reunion, Rio teases her, saying she still doesn't have any curves, prompting Celia to shriek and call him insensitive, but she admits he's become strong and brave. While preparing tea like they used to, Rio asks about the wedding, wanting to know if it's truly what she wants, especially with Charles as the groom. Celia tries to hide the truth, saying Charles is a gentleman and kind, but Rio sees through the lie. Irritated, she yells that if he thinks she's lying, he should just marry her himself and take her away. Her words catch Rio off guard, but she quickly says she was joking and tells him to forget it. Celia then begs him not to attend the wedding to avoid trouble and pushes him out of the room, breaking down in tears after closing the door. Outside, Rio leaves the castle, understanding that she's trying to protect him from getting involved, but he's determined not to let the wedding happen. High above the castle, Rio reflects on uncovering the true motives behind Celia's arranged marriage, and Asa steps forward, offering to help. He thanks her, feeling guilty for always needing her help, but Asa assures him that she'll always be by his side, and that he can count on her for anything. The next morning, Charles welcomes Rose back after a long journey and invites him to stay the night at his mansion. Rose, with a touch of irony, reminds him that he's not the one getting married that night. Suddenly, he senses a powerful spirit's presence and steps away to investigate. Meanwhile, Celia, already resigned to her fate, prepares for the wedding, accepting her role as a puppet in Charles's hands. He embraces her, telling her not to worry, that his 7 other wives will teach her everything she needs to know. As soon as he leaves, the first wife, Tinas, makes it clear that despite Celia's noble status, she's nothing more than a pawn in their plans and must obey every command. Celia tries to stay composed, but Tinas mocks her, insulting her appearance. At that moment, a maid announces the arrival of Princess Christina, who immediately notices the hostility in the room and asks to speak with Celia alone. Once they're together, Christina lets out a sigh of relief at seeing Celia again. But her expression soon turns somber as she laments the stupidity of the royal family for forcing this marriage. She remembers how happy and full of life Celia used to be back at the academy, comparing it to now, like a songbird trapped in a cage. Christina swears she'll do whatever she can to help if Celia ever needs anything. Meanwhile, Charles walks beside Alfred, the strongest warrior in the kingdom, and declares that as supreme ruler after the wedding, he'll command the entire military, confirming his absolute control. The wedding ceremony begins with a grand national celebration, but while the crowd rejoices, Celia stands expressionless, her hand tightly held by Charles. He whispers eagerly about their wedding night, revealing that all of this is part of his plan to one day rule the entire kingdom. As they near the castle, Asa notices how calm Rio is despite facing an entire nation. He explains that it's her presence that keeps his nerves steady. When Celia's carriage approaches, Asa uses telepathy to speak to her, revealing that she's Rio's spirit and that he's in the crowd watching. Seeing his face, Celia smiles softly, but the tears she'd been holding back finally fall. Startled, Charles asks why she's crying, and she covers it up by saying she's just moved by the joy of becoming his wife. When she glances back, Rio is already gone from the crowd, leaving her wondering if it was just an illusion, resigned again to a life as a lifeless doll. But suddenly, Rio bursts through the crowd, knocking down guards and soldiers trying to block him. Using wind magic, he dodges the mage's attacks, slipping through every barrier with incredible agility. Chaos erupts among the troops as Charles tries to calm Celia, assuring her that his soldiers are the best in the nation. Rio, fully determined, reaches Charles and lands a devastating punch straight into his stomach. Finally facing Celia, Rio places a knife gently against her neck, shocking everyone around them. Through telepathy, he explains to Celia that it's all part of the plan. As Charles struggles to get up, Rio threatens to snap his spine if he doesn't stay put. Then he turns to Celia and tells her that he's facing an entire kingdom just to ask, one last time, if this marriage is truly what she wants. Celia hesitates, saying she's already accepted her fate, but Rio insists that he knows she's being forced. He swears that if that's the case, he'll end the ceremony right there. Touched, Celia smiles and teases him for being bossy. Rio smiles back, saying he just wants to protect her, no matter the cost. Standing firm, he tells Celia how important she is to him, that he can't bear to lose her to a future that would make her miserable. He admits he's already felt the pain of losing something precious, and refuses to live with more regret. He emphasizes that if the marriage were truly what she wanted, she wouldn't have that sadness in her eyes. With unwavering resolve, he promises to grant her wish, as long as she doesn't give up on herself. When Celia asks what he'd do if she chose not to marry, Rio tells her he'd take her away, fleeing the kingdom so her family wouldn't suffer the consequences. Still uncertain but moved by his words, Celia finally confesses that she wants to escape with him. Hearing this, Rio grins and boldly declares that he's going to steal Charles's bride to humiliate him completely. He holds Celia tightly and leaps into the sky amid the chaos. Celia's father watches, worried, as his daughter smiles to reassure him. Furious, Charles orders his men to capture Rio, but Alfred, the military commander, tries to calm the situation, warning that rash actions could cost them dearly. The soldiers ignore him, and Rio easily vaults over their ranks. Alfred tries to contain the panic, but Charles blames him for Rio's escape, implying that someone with personal motives must have kidnapped Celia. Unfazed, Alfred retorts sarcastically, suggesting that anyone in the kingdom could be a suspect, since everyone has a reason to hate Charles. Enraged, Charles commands Alfred to fix the situation immediately. As Rio dashes across rooftops with Celia in his arms, he warns her that he's going to speed up to shake off the griffins pursuing them. Adjusting to the intense motion, Celia urges him to go faster. After a fierce chase, Rio dives into an alleyway and hands Celia over to Asa. He explains that he'll distract the army while she escapes with Asa, promising to reunite with them outside the kingdom. With one last look of trust, Rio takes off to face the soldiers, determined to secure Celia's freedom and the promise of a new life together, far from the chains of the past. Leaping across rooftops, Rio draws the army's attention. When the soldiers realize Celia is gone, they fire a flare to alert reinforcements and surround the area, exactly as Rio had planned. He dodges a barrage of magical attacks, weaving effortlessly between spells as he bounds from building to building. When he notices soldiers moving to block Celia's escape route, he drops down and swiftly takes them all out. In the midst of the chaos, Alfred, the kingdom's strongest warrior, appears. Rio recognizes him instantly and prepares to fight. Alfred orders his troops to fall back, choosing to face Rio himself. He charges forward at incredible speed, but Rio's martial prowess keeps him one step ahead. Alfred's sword, however, carries a powerful enchantment that makes the ground tremble with each swing. Their battle is fierce, Rio dodging and countering with perfect precision. Alfred launches a final strike, but Rio channels his strength, pivots midair, and lands a crushing punch that sends Alfred flying back. After the clash, Alfred stands dazed, unable to comprehend how Rio is still standing. Assuming his last attack must have finished the fight, he orders his men to search the area. Meanwhile, Celia waits anxiously with Asa, her heart pounding. When Rio finally appears, Celia runs toward him, stumbling and falling into his arms. With his usual teasing tone, Rio jokes that the fall would have been softer if she'd grown in the important areas. Despite his playful jab, Celia smiles in relief, overjoyed that she's finally free to live life her own way. As they celebrate, a strange magical phenomenon unfolds, beams of light shooting into the sky across the world. Asa senses a lost connection rekindling and asks Rio to help those in need. Elsewhere, 3 newly arrived girls in this world realize their phones have no signal before a massive bandit appears, capturing them to sell as slaves. Rio arrives on the scene and confronts the slavers, asking if they've seen a device like his. Hearing desperate cries in Japanese coming from one of the wagons, he swiftly neutralizes every thug standing in his way and frees the girls. When he opens the final carriage, unlocking the chains, he's stunned to see someone he never thought he'd meet again. The girl who once swore her devotion to him, someone he could never forget.